Good evening to the folks at home, and welcome to See You at USC on Monday night. My name is Dan Toomey, and thank you for joining us on our last episode of the semester. Joining me tonight is Mr. Bob Bendetson, a TV and film writer and producer. It's not going to be an interview you're going to want to miss. Stick with us. And thank you once again for joining us to the folks at home. My name is Dan Toomey, and once again joining us, Mr. Bob Bendetson. Thank you so much for coming on the show tonight.
Pleasure.
And so just a bit of for the folks at home who may not be aware of what you do, a brief bio about yourself, if you wouldn't mind.
Yes, we've already discussed my teeth.
Yes, yes, you're fantastic dental hygiene.
My hygiene. I was a writer, producer on TV shows for about half-hour TV shows for about 25 years. I worked my way up to what's called showrunner, which you're in charge of the whole thing, executive producer, head writer. And then the last show I did was The Simpsons for a few seasons, and after that, I got into features. I started directing features, animated and live action. And now I'm sitting here.
Yeah.
I finally reached the top.
The peak of fame.
Yeah, Trojan TV.
This is where you
Fight
dreamt
on.
of being. Yeah, totally. And so where did that first start as a student and finding that interest in writing? Like, where did that...
It didn't. I was a phys
Really?
ed major in school. I was a wrestler in high school and college. And I realized there's no money in teaching PE or wrestling.
Yeah.
So I got into sitcom writing, and it paid a lot of money.
Really?
And I just kept going. And I must have been like an idiot savant or something. I never had practiced writing. I didn't like writing.
Really?
And I fell into it, and I just kept doing it. And as long as people kept paying me, I kept,
Yeah.
I kept going.
Yeah, it was like a great cycle for you.
Yes.
So was that in LA where you first started?
Yeah.
Or was that... Okay.
I was in LA. I came out here. My brother and I came out. We were trying to make a lot of money doing different things. We had a blackjack system. We played in Vegas for about a year and a half, and we finally lost everything and ended up leaving Vegas crying. So we came out here. And my brother read at the time in Writer's Digest that scripts were paying about, I'm going to talk a lot about money, by the way.
Oh,
Scripts were paying about
go for it.
$3,500 a piece. So we came out, we wrote a spec, Mork and Mindy, which was on at the time, and got us on a TV show then. And we just kept
Oh, wow.
working and working and working
Yeah.
and kept going.
So if you could have any, I mean, USC is a big school for film production, and,
Right.
and they have a brilliant screenwriting program. Because you didn't really have a formal education going into it.
Nothing.
What advice would you give somebody who is studying screenwriting and is trying to break into the business, if you had any to offer?
I don't, is the first thing. But it's a very tough gig. You have to have the thickest skin in the world because you're going to be insulted and put down and rejected 99% of the time. So you really have to just keep going. You have to really want to do it for some reason other than it just sounds cool to be a writer, because it's really tough. When you're writing, whether it's a half-hour show, an hour show, or a feature, no matter what you see on TV or in the movies, everything you do has to be better than that. Because whoever reads it, if they see something that's similar, they're just going to go, it's fine. You really have to blow the socks off of people all the time. After you've had success for 10 years, you still have to blow the socks off people all the time. You can never sit on your laurels. You just have to keep fighting and fighting and fighting, because it's so easy for this business to say, we're done with you and moving on.
Yeah. And so where does a writer as experienced as you usually look for inspiration after that in trying to build on?
Things pop in my head, and for features I'm doing, just like I'll be walking. Well, no, actually, I was pitching at DreamWorks a couple ideas once for animation.
Yeah.
And they were turning down all three things that I pitched. And so as I was sitting there, he said, do you have anything else? And something popped into my head, and that's what I sold.
On the spot.
On the spot. So
That's
there's
crazy.
no inspiration. Right?
So it can be as spontaneous or as cultivated as you want.
Right, and you can sometimes, you'll have the best ideas just when you're on the spot, because you're not sitting there concentrating, trying to think of some ideas. It's just your mind is racing, and you're just...
Do you feel like that's a lot of problem writers run into? Is they'll have their hands on a project for so long, it'll kind of get away from the like initial big idea that led them to it? Or
I think so. I think the process also is, the movie I had just been doing for the last 3 years, an animated film called Oldzilla, and it's about basically Godzilla who's old and lives by himself in a cave, and he can't take care of himself anymore, but he won't admit to himself that he's past his prime.
Yeah.
So he finds this place called Fading Fast Retirement Home, which is where Mothra and Rodan and all the monsters live now, and they're retired. And when he goes there, he sees that they just sit around talking about breakfast and lunch and their bowel movements. And he's like so disappointed, he says, we've got to go terrorize one more time before we die. Anyway, and that's what popped into my head when I was leaving DreamWorks, and it was just sort of, all right.
Just right there.
Yeah.
Huh.
But what happens is you have an idea for a film or a TV show, and then there's layer after layer executives who start, their jobs are to give notes, and whether they're positive notes or negative notes or just notes that'll move things sideways, they're forced to do it because that's their job.
Yeah.
So a lot of times you'll have something you're excited about, and after the process is over after a year or two, you just go, I don't give a... Oh, I was going to say the S word, but I was told
Safe
not
move.
to.
Safe move.
I stopped myself.
Yeah, no, those warnings are for a reason.
Yes.
But that's actually something I'm curious about. Is if you wouldn't mind walking us through the process of, okay, you have an idea and you get it on paper through the final product. What's that process like?
In like a feature or?
Sure, let's say a feature.
In a feature, a movie I'm doing now is a live action film. I basically looked at for teen comedies and trying to find a book, and I said, oh, Don Quixote hasn't been done as a teen comedy, so I basically did Don Quixote in high school, and it's about this kid who is very fearful all his life, and then he's sort of challenged to jump off a cliff. He lands on his head, he wakes up out of a coma, and he slowly becomes less and less fearful and more fearless, but his delusions take over. So it's just, so I basically stole the idea from, from Cervantes.
Yeah.
Hey, I can write a script.
Yeah.
So that's what you do too. You just look at literature and say, can I steal this idea or that idea?
And you talked earlier about something I'm curious about. You said like an executive producer will give you a note that just moves the project sideways.
Right.
What's an example of that?
And it's usually because it's usually the executives at the networks. So they are the president, vice president. I had a thing years ago where it was a movie about family of Irish immigrants, and after you get noted a while, it became leprechauns moving to New York to save their land that was being overdeveloped by some developers. So you go, oh, that's a different kind of movie. But you just go, oh, that sounds good. And you can't, because when you're sitting in a room of executives who might be 10, 15 executives, and you have a head of a studio, they're trying to impress their bosses. So what you don't want to do is make them feel bad. So if they say to you, if you're pitching something about Beyonce, and you say, you know what, I'd like that, but could we put spiders in it? You go, that's not a bad idea.
So you guys are really working together more.
No.
Would you say?
You're just trying to make them feel like what they say has meaning and make their bosses not hate them, but they're forced to say things. So no matter what they say, no matter how idiotic it is, you say, that's an interesting idea. And then the next day you go to them and say, I was thinking of that idea last night, and it made me think of blank. And somehow you try to twist things around from what they said to something that'll actually work. So a lot of what you do when you're in production is that.
Okay, so their job is just essentially just to give notes no matter what they are, or?
Yeah, and some people will give notes trying to improve things, but it's all subjective. If I gave a script of mine, or if I read a script to 1,000 different people, you'd have 1,000 different notes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean anything other than there's 1,000 different opinions out there. So it's sort of having a vision, sticking with a vision, fighting for the vision, even though it's going to be destroyed by the time it's in the theaters.
I mean, is it difficult to maintain that, I don't want to say like artistic vision, but to maintain like the initial vision of the story through that huge process?
No, because you look at your check stub at the end of the week and you go, hey, it's all good.
I don't mind that at all.
No, so it's very difficult, and I've had pilots going from beginning to end after a year, and by the last minute, I've been fighting and fighting and fighting, and you just sort of either give up or you just explode and you lose your mind. And I have had pilots getting killed just because I finally said, that makes no sense.
Yeah.
But if you don't do that, everything you write is going to be sort of mediocre. And if you do that, you're not necessarily going to get things on the air or in the theater.
Yeah.
So you have to walk this fine line about kissing up and sticking to your vision.
Yeah, which is definitely, I feel like it's a very thin line for a lot of people.
Very hard to walk.
Yeah, I can imagine. And something, because I mean, and you've been on both sides of the equation, and something I would love to hear more about is just, what was the transition like from starting as a writer and then moving on to producing?
You know, I mean, I had probably like 14 years of working as a story editor, executive story editor, co-producer on shows. When I became a showrunner, or just executive producer, head writer, it was the first one. It was on Alf, and by that time, I had seen all the other producers, and I thought, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. And so much of it is, you know, you're basically you're a writer. A lot of writers started, you know, they were beaten up when they were kids, so they watched TV a lot. They were the nerds in their neighborhood.
Yeah.
And now they're put in charge of 150 people. So it's now, a lot of writers feel it's payback time. I'm going to make you pay for how I was beaten up when I was a kid.
Wow.
So a lot of producers become very nasty. I wasn't beaten up a lot because I was a wrestler.
Yeah,
so I didn't have to go through that.
Yeah.
But it was just how to treat people. A lot of it is really how to treat people, how to make people feel enthusiastic, how not to beat somebody down.
That's funny.
If you're sitting in a room, there was a show Coach. I don't know if you ever.
Yeah.
We used to work till 4 a.m. all the time on that show because the actor, the star of it, was not a very nice person. And so at 4 a.m, you'd have people falling asleep, and you're like a cheerleader trying to get them up. If somebody pitches something and it doesn't work or it's not funny, you don't just say, "Oh, that sucks." You know, you say,
it's more constructive.
More constructive, positive feedback, because you want them to feel good about themselves. So it's constant trying to get everybody, and the same thing with actors. You know, you want actors to feel, you know, when I'm on the set, no matter what an actor does, I'll try to get the actor to feel, wow, you know, good about what they've done, even if afterwards I'm trying to adjust their performance.
Yeah. And do you ever feel like actors specifically will try to alter a script at all, or?
Some actors will, but you know, improv actors will, stand-up comics will. Most actors are so insecure, they just want to read the lines and do the best you can and have somebody say, "Great job."
Yeah.
But no, you know, very few times where an actor will say, you know, they may say, "Could I do something? Can you do something better with a line here or a little thing here? It's not working for me."
Yeah.
And you go, "Great." You know, you want them to feel comfortable in the position, but no, that's you know.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, sometimes you'll have some actors who are really good at improv, and some actor who isn't. So if you have a 2-person scene and one person's good and one person's not, it just falls apart.
And it looks a little awkward.
It's horrible because one person just like on
is
fire,
the whole thing,
and the other one's just standing there going, "I guess," you know.
Yeah, and that's funny because it sounds like a lot of the writing process, a lot of it is people skills, as you talked about. That's interesting.
Well, because it's the writing itself, and again, it's really difficult to write something to make it pop, to make everybody think this is a brilliant script. But after that, dealing with the studios, the networks, the actors, directors, everybody else, it is people skills. It's learning how to just navigate this world of insecure people.
And you would say, I hear one of the golden rules of Hollywood is just like try to be as nice as possible to people. Do you think that?
Right. No, it's true. You know, they always say, you know, because the people you're going to stab on the way up are the same people you're going to, you know, see on the way down. So you always, and it's not just you're going to get better work from people, but it's just the right thing to do, to be nice, to make people feel good about what they're doing, because most people are really trying hard to make a good product. So, you know.
Well, there you go. And we have to take a quick commercial break, but I would love to hear more about your career for the second half. You can stick around.
I will stick around.
Awesome. Thank you once again for joining us.
My pleasure.
We will be right back.
Good facial things. I want to point out how good you're.
And welcome back to the folks at home here at See You at USC on Monday night. My name is Dan Toomey. And once again, our guest for the evening is Mr. Bob Bendetson, TV writer, film producer, jack of many trades here. Thank you for joining us on the first half.
My pleasure.
And just towards the second half, I would love to talk more about because you've been involved in the entertainment, TV, and film industry for so long. Do you see, what is the main differences you see back from when you started to the industry now, would you say?
So many people, when I was breaking in, it was sort of, nobody really fantasized about it all over the country. Now, there's so many people trying to break into this business.
Really?
My daughter's school, you know, it's like you talk to any of the kids and they say, what are you going to do? Oh, I'm going to be an actor. I'm going to be a singer. I'm going to be, you know, I grew up in the Bronx and you say, what are you going to do? And oh, I'm going to be a plumber. I'm going to be an electrician. I'll be a teacher. I'll be a doctor. And everybody I meet now, they all want to get into the entertainment industry.
Where do you think that first developed?
People Magazine, Entertainment Tonight, where it all looks glamorous, and it looks like that's sort of the end-all, be-all to end-all, where you just go, if I don't have fame and I don't have wealth and success, I'm no longer successful. When I was growing up, if you were a successful electrician, you were very, highly regarded. And now it just doesn't seem, at least in LA and New York, everybody is very driven to get to this pinnacle of something of unhappiness.
And is it the same? Is it the same in New York, would you say?
Yeah.
Really?
In New York and Manhattan, it's the same thing. People are just constantly, it doesn't seem like people want to live normal lives anymore and just accept, hey, I'm happy, I have a family, I have kids, I'm raising the kids, I have the weekend to spend at home and watch TV. Now you have to, it's a much more driven society than when I was growing up.
Yeah. And do you think any of that is driven by the entertainment industry in itself?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
No, I think, even movies and TV shows about itself. There's so many talk shows. Fame is sort of the goal now for people.
Yeah.
And even when I talk to, I'll talk at college. I've spoken here at some classes and stuff. You'll say to people in classes, so what do you want to do? And they said, I just want to get into showbiz. And I said, well, what part? Well, it doesn't really matter. I might want to write, I might want to direct or act. And you go, why? And they said, well, it's exciting. And you say, why is it exciting? And they're not sure, but they just want, there's something about the fame. And then when you're doing it, and you're working on a TV show and a movie, everybody I know who works, they go, oh my God, I got to get the hell out of here. Am I allowed to say God? I'm not allowed to curse, but God's okay?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, I'm not in trouble for that.
We haven't been shut down. The screen's not black yet.
All right, good.
All right, yeah,
good.
we're fine.
I will watch that too. I won't say, I won't use the Lord's name in vain again. So it seems like there, and I know, even my daughter's school where there were kids who were, and I say kids, meaning 17, 18-year-olds old, and it was just this drive to get into showbiz, and I was never sure why they wanted to do it. And you say, well, what, or even, people I knew who said, yeah, I want to be a writer. Well, how much do you write? Well, I never write. So, well, usually to be a writer, you have to write, and it's very, and they'll say, but it's too hard. And I'll say, but that's what you have to do. And they say, no, well, we want to get paid for it first. I said, well, nobody's going to pay you until you see it. They see a sample of your work. And even after you've been successful, I write spec scripts all the time because I know if I don't, I won't work again. So you're just constantly writing. I think people just are looking for the fame and the riches more than they are what this business is truly about, which is a lot of work.
Yeah, and no, it's interesting you say that. We've had the guests who are actors who have been on this show say one of the most interesting parts of Hollywood is that there are so many people who will call themselves actors in Hollywood, but not at all be actors. You know what I mean? And I feel, do you get a lot of, as a producer, do you get a lot of people who try to break into the industry just by saying, like, I'm a writer? Or,
all the time.
Really?
And you'll say, well, I have to, there's usually somebody on the plane who I happen to mention what I do. And now I say I'm a dentist. Oh, yeah. So, but then a lot of times they'll say, well, I have this cavity, so can you look at that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Lordy.
It's all good. One check.
I was warned not to curse. And all right, anyway, so yes, sometimes people say that, and I'll say, well, what you'll have to do is you'll have to actually get a sample script, whether it's a TV script of a show you might like. Let's say it's Modern Family. You might have to write a sample of that. Well, how do I do that? I said, well, that's up to
I'm
you.
not going to tell you
No,
all of it right
you
here.
have to figure out how to get a sample script and how to write the script. And even after you write something, when my brother and I were first trying to break in on Mork and Mindy, we spent 9 months on the script.
Wow.
And that was pretty much full time. And the script now, I can write a half-hour script in 2 weeks. We spent 9 months because we made sure every word, every joke, everything, we would work on one line for a full day to make sure it made us laugh out loud. And that's what you have to do. You have to, if I'm reading a spec script, or if producers are reading a spec script, or executives, you know, the first show again that I produced was Alf. The first week I produced Alf, I got 1,000 spec scripts, half-hour spec scripts from agents. These are from agents, so they were represented writers.
Yeah.
I would pick up a script. If I wasn't sucked into the story and laughing out loud in 5 pages, I'd put it down.
Wow.
I don't
so you really gotta.
You don't have the time. You know, you can't spend weeks because you're in production next week. So you have to hire a staff. You have to hire the actors. You have to, you know, everything has to be done. You don't have time. So really, you have to write everything you have to write. It has to suck the reader in immediately. Suck is not a bad word, though, by the way.
In the correct context.
Yes, yes. But you have to suck the reader in immediately, whether it's making them laugh, whether dramatically saying, oh, I want to find out what's going to happen to this character. I want to find out what the next scene is. Every scene you write in a script has to lead you to the next scene, saying, what am I going to find out? Why do I want to keep reading this? Because once it's on screen, you're telling the audience, you're watching this, you want the audience to stick around. You want the audience to look at, I've got to find out what's going to happen with the character.
And that's interesting. Would you say, is that good? How has that affected the industry today, now that so many people are coming in expecting not necessarily a handout, but riches on their first script or role?
They're disappointed.
Really?
No, because there are people, I mean, when I was hiring people, some people worked for 8-10 years till they broke in. I know people after 6 months will say, well, that's not going to, you know, this industry's closed off, you know, it's all nepotism, so there's no reason for me to try. And you go, no, there's not just nepotism. People make it, but you have to, if you want to be in this industry, how many years are you willing to give to be successful?
Yeah.
And are you saying, look, I'll give 5 years of my life, and if I'm not successful in 5 years, let me find a real career? Or do I say, I want to just keep doing this even if I'm not successful? I'll work as something else. But this, and what I try to do to younger people is say, what's your vocation, your avocation? If you want to be an actor, if you want to be a director, great. But also have a backup for a career.
Yeah, no.
Because also when you're coming in, like actors who come in and audition, if there's any flop sweat, if there's any nervousness, you pick it up immediately, especially when you go to the studio and network. They hate that.
Nervousness.
So nervousness.
Wow.
So you either have to be a sociopath, where you just don't care what people think, or are so talented, which is very rare, or have a career. So you're going, look, this is fun for me.
Yeah.
And if I can't make it, that's okay. This is, I'll go to another audition, but if I'm rejected, it's not the end of the world. I can still pay my rent.
That's funny.
And most people who are trying to break in, they don't have that, you know, backup.
Yeah.
So they're just in fear constantly. And the whole business is based on fear anyway, so you don't want
you don't want to add any more on to what's already existing.
That how am I going to eat tomorrow if I don't get this job?
Yeah.
Because no matter how talented you are going to have flop sweat if you know if this job, if your eating rides on you getting this job.
Yeah. And do you think, I mean, you talked about confidence being important for actors, but would you say the same is for writers as well whenever they're pitching?
If I was pitching, let's say a movie, or
sure,
I may not only, I will write the script, which might take me 6 months to write, and then I will prepare a pitch, which might take me a month. And even in the preparation of pitch, how I'm going to pitch this, how I'm going to suck the listener into the story. What am I going to say about the character, this character who grew up in this area, and this is what happens to him, and then what happens is this and this.
Wow.
And what you try to do dramatically is build the story so they're on the edge of their seat, and they want to know, as you're saying it, what happens next.
Yeah.
Then you're also, as you're doing your pitch, you're practicing every single possible question that can come up, and you're coming up with on-the-spot ad-libs
So
that
you
you've been
have to be ready for anything.
Anything. Any question they ask, you have to be ready for, because if they say to you, well, do you think blank? And you go, you've lost them.
Yeah, they're looking for that same idea that you talked about earlier, where just it has to be ready and spontaneous.
It has to be spontaneous, but it also shows your confidence in your vision. If you hesitate, you don't have confidence. Every executive who's hearing your pitch is fearful about losing their job. So if they hear a pitch, 99.99% of the time, they'll hear a pitch and it won't go anywhere because they don't want to lose their job. If they pitch it to their boss and they say, you know what, we really like this pitch, or we really like this movie or this TV series, and the boss says, okay, and then it happens and it's not good, they get fired.
Wow.
So the incentive is for the executive to never pass anything by them. But if you come in with overwhelming confidence, they feed off your confidence and they go, he was so confident, I'm feeling a little more confident too.
Yeah.
I mean, they look at your resume and everything else, but the confidence helps so much in a pitch meeting.
And that's funny because it sounds like an industry that's so, like, people, I think, stereotypically look at the entertainment industry and say, oh, it's so ruthless. But it's like that for a reason because, you know, the executive producers, they have to keep a job too.
Oh, yeah. No, they will, you know, stab you in the back all the time. They will steal ideas. They will do anything because they're basically trying to keep their job. They have kids in private school.
Yeah.
You got to pay the bill.
Yeah, and it's survival of the fittest, it sounds like.
And if they can, you know, keep their job, or if somebody, I mean, I've seen executive, I've had calls, I was trying to hire a writer on a show, an executive called me and said, you can't hire that writer, they're terrible. I called my friend who was running a show the writer was on previously, and it turned out that writer was fabulous.
Really?
But the executive was trying to do her own agenda. So it's wonderfor. Get in this business. It's great.
It sounds like it. Well,
all of
on that final
Excellent.
note, thank you for not only watching our final episode of the season, but thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. And by the way, just again, look at his skin. Is that
Thank you very much for watching
flawless?
See You at USC
Flawless
on Monday
skin.
night.
He has
We will see you
flawless
tomorrow
skin.
with Cole Sullivan. Have a good evening.
Flawless. Brilliant.
Excellent. So,
Ta-ta.
thank you.
You're watching Trojan Vision. For more of your favorite shows, check us out at trojanvision.com and like us on Facebook.